Hey everybody, Hunter back again. Gonna do part 2 of the model car garage piano hinge tutorial. So we'll pan the camera down here and we'll get started on the next step. Okay, when we left on the last video, we had cut and trimmed both of our pieces, one for the door and one for the cab. And that's the way they're laying here. The only thing that I did off camera is your attachment points where it was attached to the fret, and also where we cut the little tails off of the ends of the hinge. I took a small file, went in and cleaned that up and made everything smooth. I like to go ahead and get that out of the way now before you assemble the hinge. It just keeps a lot of wear and tear off of the assembled hinge so you don't break it. I'm trying to clean it up afterwards, so it's a good idea to go in and do it now. So what we're going to do is go ahead and set up the first of the hinge here. And the first thing that we're going to do is take our straight edge and we're going to put a reference mark on this piece of plastic that we're using. And I like to make the reference mark 3 to 4 times longer than the actual hinge that you're working with. So as you can see, our hinge is this long and our line's down to here. And I usually come to the center of that reference mark, or somewhat in the center of it. And what we're using that mark for is at the very bottom of the fingers. And I'll hold it up here and see if we can get a shot of it. There we go. This line right in here, at the very bottom of the flat piece at the end of the fingers, is what we want to line up on that reference line. So we'll just basically slide that over until we get it lined up right on the line. There we go. And the next thing we're going to do is take a little bit of Tamiya tape. You can use pretty much any masking tape you really want to do this. And we're going to go in and very carefully tape the hinge down. And what you want to do is line your tape up with your reference mark also. And stick one end of it down right on your reference mark. And drop it down onto the other side lined up with the reference mark. And make sure that your hinge stays straight and flush against the reference mark, and the tape is stuck to it very well. Now what we're doing this for is it actually gives us something to hold this photo etched hinge in place while we're doing the bends on it. You don't want to have that thing moving around and chasing it while you're trying to bend these little fingers over, because you don't want to get them bent. When you bend them over, you want to make sure they go right straight over and around. And because if you get them pinched in against each other, the second half of the hinge won't go into place. So make sure that when you bend everything over, it goes directly right straight over. So we got that tape down there. We're taped on our reference mark. Now the next thing that we're going to do is, when you put in your pin that you're going to use in your hinges, you don't want to line the pin up all the way against this reference mark. And the reason for that is you want to leave just a little bit of a space between the very bottom at the fingers, and that allows this piece of photo etch to slide in behind the wire once we get the first part of this hinge bent over. If you put it all the way down against it, like say we was to take the wire and line it right up against our reference line and bend that over, you wouldn't be able to loop this section of hinge into place. So what you want to do is just leave a little bit of a gap in there. It doesn't need to be a whole lot, because remember, we cut the fingers back to 0.040, so you don't have a lot of playroom or extra that you can use on this. So like I say, just give it a little bit. It doesn't need to be much. Like in this case, what I can see is just a little bit of the white plastic showing on this side of the Tamiya tape, and that's what you're looking for. The next step that we're going to do is go in with the number 11 blade, and I like to start here at the bottom finger. And while you're holding that piece of wire into place, you just want to lightly bring the finger up and set it about a 30-degree angle off of your plastic, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then you want to go back to the top finger and do the same thing. And all we're doing with that is basically just making a little cradle to lay this wire in. The next step that we're going to do is come in with another piece of tape and bring your wire out to that little right at the bottom edge of that raised area that we just bent up on the finger. And we're going to tape the wire into place at the bottom. And we're going to move up to the top and do the same thing. And all this is doing is just holding the wire into place so it's not moving around a lot. And with it there, I just take my thumb and kind of hold right above. What I'm going to be doing is bending this bottom finger over. So I will go up to about the second finger, place my thumb down on the wire to make sure it stays into place. And we're just going to pick up on the end of the finger with the tip of the hobby knife and fold it right around the wire. And because we have this trimmed down to 0.040, there will be no extra laying onto this flat part that's over here that we have taped down. So we're going to do the bottom one first, and then we will move up to the very top one. And while you're picking this up and bending the finger over, just make sure that your wire still has that gap in it, because if you don't, you won't be able to interlock the second piece. So keep a close eye on that as you're working on this to make sure you have enough clearance in there. Like in this one here, it keeps wanting to slide back toward where I don't want it here. But just as you pick up and start to fold the finger around the wire, just be very aware of where the piece of wire is. Make sure you have that clearance in there. Because like I say, if you don't have the clearance, you won't be able to get the second part of the hinge into place. And we're just going to bend that around. And now I come to something that's roughly in the center. It doesn't exactly have to be the very center one, just as long as it's in the neighborhood. And we're going to pick up with the number 11 blade. We're going to fold it over the same way we did on the top and the bottom. And like I say, again, be very aware of your spacing. Make sure that you have that little bit of a gap in there. Okay, at that point there, we have enough room to slide our second part of our hinge in and behind this piece of wire. So the next step that I do is go in and start with a couple of the other fingers to slide them over and get them bent around the wire. Okay, so we have another one over there, and I'll come down here and do one more toward the bottom. Okay, we have that one around now. Okay, now we're going to go in and we're going to take these two pieces of tape up that was holding the wire originally. Now the wire is captured in the first part of our hinge. As you can see, the wire will move back and forth within those little fingers. And what we want to do now is go ahead and take the tape up. That way we can release our hinge. And the next step of this is to take the other side of the hinge, and you want to slide it behind that piece of wire. And this can be a little tedious. That's why I say it takes about a half an hour aside for me to do these. So just take your time and be careful with it, and don't force anything into place. This stuff can be very hard to hold sometimes. So you just have to get it lined up where it needs to go and try to get everything to go in at one time. And of course this one is going to fight me all the way. Like I say, it's not really hard, it's just tedious. It's one of those things that it just takes practice and patience. And I think we have it interlocked. Yes, we do have it interlocked. Okay, with that hinge interlocked into the other one, we want to sit that down back onto our piece of plastic. And be very careful with it at this point, because you can lose it and you have to go through that whole thing of getting that to line back up again, and you don't really want to do that. So what I do now is come in and take our tape that we used before and tape the wire back down just to hold it into place and keep everything from moving around. Okay, we have that taped back into place. Now what we want to do first off is come in on the opposite side of our hinge, and we're going to bend over the finger at the very top of the hinge piece that we just interlocked with the other one. Same process, just grab a hold of it with the tip of the number 11 blade, fold it over the wire, and bend it down. Come down to the bottom of that one. Same procedure. Blade under, and fold it around the wire. Like that. And now what you want to do is just, after you have that folded around, you have the hinge actually locked together right now. Leave the tape into place and just come through and start working all of the other fingers up and over the wire. And you can start at the bottom and go up, or you can start at the top and go down. You can start in the center and go out from there. It doesn't really matter which, method you use on that. You just want to bend all the fingers over and get them pressed into place all the same. Make sure that they're tucked in nice and tight against the wire on both sides of the hinge. And you'll notice as you start doing this that, things move around a little bit, and, you just have to kind of watch what's going on, watch the hinge, and, just sometimes you have to hold it in certain areas to keep stuff from moving around as bad. But like I say, it's just tedious, nothing real hard about it. As long as you have dexterity in your fingers and you can, you know, operate a number 11 blade efficiently, anybody can really do this. Now, the one thing that I have not explained in the videos yet is I'm not going to go through the whole process of showing you how to mount these to the doors and to the cab and how to make your clearances and do all that. That's something that each individual cab is going to be different. The shape of the door is going to dictate a lot of things. You know, how deep you set the hinge within the door and the cab. That's going to be all up to you. I don't know what project you're working on, you know, what particular cab you're doing, so I have no control over that. So if I tell you to do it a certain way on one cab and you're doing it on a totally different cab, it may not work the same. So, you know, that's just something that you guys are going to have to figure out on your own on how to mount these. I can do a video on how I cut out the doors to get it prepared for this. But remember also that when you're doing your hinges, this is not the only step there is to it. There is multiple steps in making that hinge assembly work, and that includes modifying. Sometimes you have to modify the floor pan. You have to modify the dash. You will have to modify the door panels. If you're messing with an AMT kit, you're actually going to have to build a new floor, or seriously modify the interior bucket that goes in that thing that has the door panels cast into it. They're going to have to be cut out, and you're going to have to build your own door panels. So you get into scratch building then. And like with the like say something like the Peterbilt 378 kit, those door panels are separate. It makes it a little bit easier. And as far as hinging the doors, the 378s are very nice for that. You don't have to do a lot of modification to the floor. If you are doing the Ford 9000 LTL, you are going to have to change the height of the floor pan, and that means you're going to have to change the cab mounts front and rear. So there's a lot involved in it. So you guys out there that think that this is the easiest thing in the world to do, you know, bending up the hinge and getting that to operate is one thing. Getting it on a model and making it look, you know, quality is a whole different story. And like I say, I'm not going to get into how we mount all this stuff to the doors and the cab because there's just too many variables in it, and I can't do an accurate tutorial on that. So, but all we're doing now is we're still bending over the fingers. I've got 2 more to go over here. And this is the last one to bend over the wire. And another neat thing that you will see with this brass wire that I recommended you use is you can actually take this hinge apart. Again, you have to be very careful doing that because it is very tricky to get it back together. It has to be lined up perfectly. But what we have now is the photo etch hinge with the brass wire in it. And since the camera does not want to focus, there we go. That's what the hinge looks like. That's both halves twisted together and interlocked, and should work very well. Now I go back in and, you know, make sure that all my stuff is will lay, like these 2 pieces, when you fold them around, they're going to be in a V. What you want to do with those is you have to make sure that they lay right flat together first before you start trimming this wire down or doing anything like that or making any other modifications. You want these 2 pieces here at the back to lay together on the hinge, and that way you will have full travel in your hinge without it binding. And like I say, I mean, my camera is not going to focus in on a lot of this stuff. That's why I'm trying to explain every step as I go. And if you have the hinge in front of you and you're following along with the video, just kind of, listen to what I'm saying and look at what you have. And it's pretty easy to figure out. I mean, it's not all that complicated. It's just tedious. And, this is not for everybody. Not every model builder out there is going to be able to do this. Because like I say, it's very tedious. You have to have good dexterity in your fingers to be able to, get these things to interlock and twist over without bending this all up and making a mess out of it. So, I mean, I'm not going to guarantee that everybody out there can do it. It's not all that difficult. And as you can see, our wire is moving in and out of the hinge. We have it laid together there at the back. And on part 3 of the video, what we're going to do is I will show you how this hinge actually comes apart and how you will get it back together. And you can use this, and that's a good thing because you can use it for fitting the door and, fitting it to the cab and things like that. So it's very handy for that, and it also allows you to pull the pin out so you can take the door off to do your final door jams and, odds and ends. So that's what we have now. So if you're following along with the video, get up to this point, and I'm going to work on part 3 of the video. And that'll be the final parts on what we do with the hinge and how we take it apart and put it back together. And after that, the rest of it is up to you. So if you have any questions or concerns, just leave me a comment on the video, and we'll get back to you on that. And like always, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.